Good morning, everyone. We have already formed a quorum, and it's the appointed time. Let's call the meeting to order. During the 2012-2013 electrical session, as at the last meeting, we have already approved 3 items under the capital works projects with a total funding of some $2.8427 billion, and we have 6 discussion papers. 2 are about upgrading works projects to Cat A. 3 are about increasing the approved project estimate of Cat A projects, and the remaining one is about the block allocation subheads under the different capital works reserve fund, and the total funding proposal amounts to $19.3138 billion, and if all the 9 items are approved by members today, then the total funding would amount to $22.1565 billion, and setting aside land resumption and also computerization, some overall funding of $4.2565 billion, and the total funding or allocation for works projects would amount to $17.9 billion. I'd like to remind members that, you will have to stay in your seat, and if you want to speak, then please, if you want to speak, please press the relevant button in front of you. And I'd also like to remind members that if members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to the items under discussion, then in accordance with Rule of Procedure 83A, before you speak on that particular item, please do disclose the nature of that interest. And I'd also like to draw members' attention to Rules of Procedure 84 with regard to direct pecuniary interest, and also the regulations regulating members' vote. If there are no further questions, then let's move on to item 1, PWSC 39, Capital Works Reserve Fund, head 701 to 711. With us today to answer members' questions are the controlling officer or representatives of the relevant subheads, and the name list has been tabled before members, and I do not propose to read out all the names here. Head 701, we have 1004CA and 1100CA. We have the Lands Department's representative, and I don't propose to read out all the names because we have quite a sizable team from the administration. All right. Do members have any questions? Yes, Ms. Emily Lau. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'd like to ask about paragraph 5 in the paper. It says that, after setting out the funding requirements for the projects, and you said that that would amount to over $20 billion, and the administration is asking us to approve them en bloc today. And in paragraph 5, it says that if supplementary provisions are required, we will seek FC's approval as appropriate. In other words, you have already got the approved project estimate here, the APE, and you will not need to come back again, because if you look at the projects, there are quite a large number of them, and they're rather complicated. So we are just given 2 or 3 pages of document, and then are we expected to approve all of them today? Well, they are minor works under the head, so it amounts to over $20 billion, and still you call them minor works. So can Ms. Ho from the administration answer the question? Thank you, Ms. Lau, for your question. In fact, this paper is a routine one. In December every year, we will submit this to the PWSC with regard to some minor works, and also on the individual subheads. We will be reporting to the PWSC and later on the FC, and we will be seeking your approval. And as to the detailed breakdown for individual project, then in the following financial years, that is 2013 and 14, we will have to tell you exactly how much we'll be getting and what kind of works will we be undertaking. It's not just a several-page document. In fact, there will be a very thick pile of document which are appendices to the papers, and they are very detailed with regard to the individual subheads, because we have 24 existing subheads and their expenditure, and on top of that we are also proposing to set up a new subhead for the Universal Access Program. That is for the construction of lifts and escalators at certain flyovers and footbridges. So in total there will be 25 subheads, and for the 25 subheads we will set out exactly what minor works will be carried out in the coming year, and also what new minor works will be starting in the coming year. So that is under the Universal Accessibility Program. So these are the main minor works. But then for a comprehensive list of these items, we have already submitted that to the Secretariat. On top of that, on this occasion, when we seek approval for funding, we are not getting $20 billion plus. In fact, for the 25 subheads, actually we are getting $12.3 billion. And out of that, for items related to public works, it amounts to about $8.1 billion. So that's the situation. Ms. Lau, thank you. I hope that the administration will understand this. Well, for larger amounts and more complicated items, if you can give the FC a bit more time to discuss it, that would be better. Yes, I understand that you'll be attaching 3 or 4 page document to each and every item, but then you're talking about over $20 billion, and it's a very sizable amount. That's why you will have to give us enough time to discuss it. That's why after today's approval is given, and then after FC's approval, everything will be approved, and you will only be coming back if supplementary provisions are required. So I hope that you'll be more careful. And also, Chairman, with regard to the Universal Accessibility Program in Appendix C, or Annex C, I understand that many members will be prepared to support it, and this Council has also discussed it for a long time, and under the Welfare Panel we have also set up a subcommittee to look into barrier-free access. But then in the first place, you have not submitted this program to any panel for discussion, because I've read all the paragraphs. I can't see anything relating to discussion in this council. Well, some members may have some questions, and they might also give their input, because you may not be able to include everything that some members might wish under the UAP. So what is going to happen for this? Well, I think it was discussed at the last Transport Panel meeting, and the Bureau Director was also here. Where can we find it? Because very often you would also tell us exactly when or on what particular day you had come to this council or panel. So can you give us more details? Well, Deputy Secretary, with regard to the 24 existing items, well, that paper has already been submitted to the development panel, and there was already a discussion. With regard to what you just said for the new item on the UAP, well, that also was submitted to the relevant panel, and that's the Transport Panel. Which paragraph? 12, 13, and 14 in the paper. In the paper proper. In the paper proper, para 12 to 14. It already set out our consultation with different panels of this council. And for Ms. Lau, your concern about the subhead, that's in para 13. And for the relevant district councils, I don't think you'll be able to meet all their demands, right? So what is going to happen next? Transport and Housing Bureau, Under Secretary. Thank you, Chairman. On this particular item, our current thinking is like this. If the FC approves our funding request, then we'll go to all the 18 district councils, and we will discuss with them as to what they want. We propose that for every district, at least during the initial period, 3 projects can be proposed to us. we believe that at the district level, the district council will be in a better position to tell us exactly what they want. They will know the population and also the pedestrian flow and also special facilities like elderly homes and also elderly centers where more elders will be using those facilities, and they can also come up with suggestions as to where those facilities should be located. And after consulting their views, we will start with the relevant study and also the design work. Thank you. All right, if members do not have any further questions. Yes, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, thank you. With regard to the UAP, of course, we support that, but then I would like to give you two comments. I've already made that at the panel meeting, because for the lifts and escalators, very often they would not be air conditioned, but then for lifts, sometimes they might break down. Is it appropriate to have air conditioning system? Is it better to have ventilation system? Because if the air conditioners are not working, then at least for the lift tower, it will not be too stuffy if it's only equipped with ventilators or ventilation systems. But then for the HA and also government land, with regard to the connection between those two sites, how are we going to deal with the funding situation? Because we do have such problems, because if it's under the HA might not have sufficient funding, and as a result the projects might be delayed. So when it comes to the interface between the government and also different statutory bodies, how would that be dealt with? That's point number one. And number two, with regard to the different items in the paper, I can see that for the funding that will be required, there will be substantive increase. For example, head 708, well, what it's asking will represent an increase by some 600%, and also for 708, if I remember it correctly, again, it's also for a small house or small scale housing development and related developments, and that would also increase by over 700%. Why is it the case? Is it that we have more items under the program, or is it that because of the construction cost has gone up? Because on the previous occasion, with regard to the West Kowloon Cultural District, well, the estimated project cost would also go up. Instead of over 1 billion, it will be some $2 billion. So you have not explained as to why there has been such substantial increase. So can you explain why? THB, Under Secretary. Yes, concerning the air conditioning and the ventilation, I'll ask the Highways Department to answer the question. First of all, with regard to certain items involving not just the Highways Department and its purview, for example, if it enters the site of the Link REIT or the MTLCL or the Housing Department, then what will happen? After collecting the district views, well, if it goes beyond the purview of the Highways Department, then we will have to liaise with the relevant units or departments to reflect the aspiration from the community to them, and then we'll discuss with them as to how the project can be implemented. For example, within the HA, they also have some additional lifts and escalators and also barrier-free facilities. They also have a very proactive program, and it's also a rolling program done every year. And after coming up with such proposals, we'll discuss with them and we'll see if we can implement them together or how we can coordinate with one another. So that's the current practice already. Thank you. I'd like to know, are you aware if they have relevant funding for such proposals or such works like under the UAP? Under Secretary, well, with regard to the departments under my purview, for example, the MTLCL and the HA, they do have such a separate funding for this. All right. I think your other item was already discussed at the transport panel, and some members also said that, and the administration already told us that they would be looking at the actual situation on the ground to consider the design of the facilities. And what about the increase in the cost? What are the reasons? Well, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Wu, for your question. Well, I suspect this. Well, if you look at the paper, if you refer to para 4 of the paper, it sets out the individual head in the coming year and this year. That is for 2013 and 14, and also what we are asking for in 2012 and 13. What you also refer to 708 is capital subventions, and here we are talking about an increase by 4.2%. But then I also have to say that for 708, if members may refer to the annexes, in fact under 708 we have 5 subheads, and Mr. Wu was referring to an increase by some 600%. What that can be found in Annex 8A mainly is about helping some subvented bodies to construct some slope-related projects, and last year is about $2 million, and in 2013-14 that will increase to some $13 million. So from that you can see the reason why there has been an increase by some 600%. That's because the project will there are more projects.
They're related to subvented organizations, and these are slope works, and the number has increased. Next, Mr. Tam Yu-chong. Concerning the UA program, which is basically a barrier-free program, we feel that the progress taken up by the government has been very slow. This is very pressing, but the progress is slow. We feel that this program, now that we are going to increase the allocation of funding, it is going to help. The Undersecretary said that district councils will be consulted. I think that is a very good method, because the district councils are aware of which projects are more pressing. The government needs to come back to our relevant panel from time to time to update us on the latest progress, to see how much difference can be made, and for us to see the progress. So please come back from time to time. I support this. Okay, Undersecretary, you have already heard that. Ms. Ho. Chairman, I would like to ask about Head 708, Enclosure E, Social Welfare Facilities. That is page 65. Part 2, we can see some proposed new projects. In terms of the works, they are new items. But for the facilities, is it because they are being relocated due to redevelopment? Are they offering the same number of vacancies, or simply a relocation? Will there be new places being created? On Anderson Road public housing project, or there are a number of them. One is caring center for people with severe disabilities and also the severely mentally ill, and vocational training center as well. So altogether we're talking about 90-odd million, almost 100 million. So for these facilities for the seriously handicapped, will they be placed under the same roof? If that is the case, I suppose we are concerned about the design of the facilities. Can we have the plan of the overall layout? Because we're talking about almost 100 billion if they are being housed in the same building. SWD? Thank you, Chairman. I would like to respond to the question. In part 2, they are new facilities. So new places will be created on Anderson Road. They will be located in different blocks, not under the same building. So basically, we will deal with them as separately operated facilities. I understand that it's difficult to house all social welfare facilities under the same roof. So if we place them in newly developed housing estates, it's understandable. But in terms of the design, when you place the facilities in different blocks, or when you concentrate them, can you explain to us what considerations you would give to the arrangement? Well, it actually depends on the phases of construction. And we need to see how many vacant areas are available, what is the total GFA available. We have been looking at certain special welfare facilities and space provided by the housing department. We will try to place the facilities in the same building, but on Anderson Road, because of certain constraints, we decided to place the facilities in different phases in different blocks. These different units will be operated by different organizations in the future. So that is the situation for the Anderson Road public housing development. This is a new housing development. I want the SWD to provide some paper to tell us the pros and cons for concentrating the facilities in the same place, and also pros and cons for separating them into different places. Because we're talking about people with disabilities, and there's vocational training facilities provided. If they can be placed in the same block, it will seem optimal. I just wonder why they cannot be placed in the same building. I would like to see some supplementary information. So, you know where? Yes, different blocks on Anderson Road. I think we can provide some supplementary paper later on, how we gave considerations to arranging the facilities locations. Okay, please consider the suggestion and try to concentrate the facilities in the same place, or more or less in the same cluster or the same block. Maybe that will be easier to manage. Mr. Wong Kwok Heng. Thank you, Chairman. Concerning the UA program, I have raised some questions. Before we came to PWSC, at the relevant panel meeting, I already said that the administration need to provide a list of all the locations involved. Now I can see Annex 6C1. This is just a number for different districts. I don't see the list. Can you give us the list that I asked for? So concerning 6C1 for Hong Kong Island site, I'm not sure if these have already been considered. What about Central Western? Right now there's only one escalator in Central area. When it is being maintained, it is a great disturbance to the local residents, so they want more escalators. And also around Belches, the escalator only goes up but not down. Again, it is a serious problem when it is maintained. In Southern District, in Aberdeen, the old main street, people have to take many steps to go to Port Folam to get on public transportation. What about Ablay Estate to the park? They also want an escalator. Have you considered these places? Under Secretary. Concerning the list, Mr. Wong requested. On the 13th of December, we already provided the list to LegCo members. So perhaps Mr. Wong can refer to that list and see if what he has in mind is already included. Concerning what he just mentioned, strictly speaking, they do not fall under Universal Accessibility Program. They are simply pedestrian schemes involving escalators. The two programs are different. Mr. Wong Kwa-heng? It is exactly because of this UA program we had to pursue the administration for the list. So I'm not sure if that list is really responding to the residents' requests, and that is why we have asked the administration to consider our views at the same time. Under Secretary? Chairman, concerning the list, we have collated views from more than 2,000 members of the public. We have sorted out certain information by removing duplications and came up with a list. Of course, some of these people were actually district councillors. When we receive funding support, we will discuss with all the relevant district councils to see which items should be handled with higher priority. They can recommend 3 projects as priority projects. I mentioned 4 locations, and they're exactly recommendations by district councillors. Please have that recorded, and I urge the administration to pay more attention. Okay, the 4 locations you mentioned, as the Undersecretary has said clearly, they do not come under the UA program. So perhaps you need to pursue those through other channels. I just want to add that they come from district councils. So LegCo members should bring these matters to a different level. Mr. Van Kok Wai, I have already read the list. In different districts, there will be different situations, only 4 items in Sai Kung. As a local district councillor, I have noted that in TKO Town Main Street, there's a special item, and in 0405, planning already started. Different government departments already undertook to complete the project, so I'm quite surprised that projects already planned and already received funding are appearing in these new items. If the DC recommends the other 3, shouldn't we do all 4? What about in other 17 districts? Are there any districts where items are appearing on this list, but they have been going on for quite some time? Undersecretary? Highway Department colleague. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Fan, for the question concerning Town Main Street project. Previously at District Council, we did discuss the matter. And now we have changed the policy. According to the old policy, if there is a standard ramp, we will not provide escalator. That is the old policy. And the current policy is that we will treat 2 equally. In other words, for some footbridges, they may have a standard ramp already, but we will still consider the construction of an elevator. We have received some views that the public would like to have some escalators or elevators attached to some footbridges. So we are now launching these schemes under the new policy. I would like to add one thing, Chairman. Please be cautious and not to place duplicated projects. Town Main Street project has gone through detailed discussion. The original ramp is going to be demolished so that it can tie in better with a new park. I'm just worried about similar projects in other 17 districts. When the government deals with them, please list them separately so that escalator or elevator projects originally planned or already planned will not appear in this list.
With regard to the UAP, all right, this year you're asking for some $118 million and some 80 feasibility studies and designs will be conducted, and then for 60 you're talking about additional works and also the construction cost for that, and you also said that for one lift, well, at least it will cost you some $20 million, and apparently they do not tally. So can you explain to us why? Is it that some of them might not necessarily be related to the construction of lifts? And also you're talking about some $20 to $40 million per lift, and the repair cost is about $4 million a year, so it's over $30,000 a month. So how many contractors have been accredited and approved? Have you talked to them? Because we're talking about billions of dollars spending several years, and of course you're talking about tendering this all in one go, and you'll be providing all the information to them. So are you talking about some 100 or several hundred such projects, or is it that anybody walking in, and so long as he can complete one of those projects, he'll be able to get the money? And how many such lifts are you talking about? Even if you're talking about several dozen undergoing repair and maintenance, the cost would also be very substantial. So how do you do the calculations? Chairman, with regard to the funding requirement, it will involve the capital flow, and it will spend several years, and therefore for the details I'll defer to the Highways Department, which will give you more details. Yes, Mr. Lau? Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Tian, for your question. Well, as Mr. Tian has read it, all right, apparently the sums do not add up, and they are not quite enough. That's true, because every year we'll come to this council for the spending for that particular year. For example, if we were to implement 60 such projects of construction of lifts, actually the amount would exceed this amount, but then during the initial period the construction might not be in full steam, and therefore we are not asking for the full sum. Indeed, every year we'll be looking at the expenditure for that particular year, and then we'll come back to this council during that particular year for funding for that particular year. And as Mr. Tian just pointed out, that's why the sums do not tally. And also, in response to your question, well, during the construction phase, number one, the location will scatter in different districts throughout the territory. And you're right in saying that there is room to maneuver. We can pull them together so that the cost can come down. But then we also have to bear in mind the request from the district council, that is, we press ahead with the construction as soon as possible, and therefore wherever one can be implemented soon, we will do it in the most reasonable manner, so that 2 or 3 might be lumped together, and then we can implement them in different batches, instead of consolidating them into one substantial or substantive contract. And that being the case, we may not be able to bargain with the contractor so that we can have more cost cutting. But then it depends on the nature of individual project. For example, sometimes we may have to change or divert some of the underground facilities, and therefore it depends on the specific nature of a particular project and also the requirements and so on. With regard to maintenance costs, yes, Mr. Tian was right in a sense that it's not like construction. We do not have to separate them into different packages, and therefore we can combine several minor contracts, and then we can try to cut down the cost by combining several of them. Mr. Tian, but then for the qualified contractors who can bid for such projects, how many of them are there? Because you're talking about quite a substantial amount of money spanning several years. So how many contractors are there who are qualified to undertake such projects? Well, for the construction of such projects, we require them to have a CEDD or CED license, and they will also have to have electrical engineering qualification, because we're talking about civil engineering projects and also electrical engineering projects, and therefore we will require them to have both qualifications before they can be qualified as our contractors. You do not have the figures. Well, I think we have a list. We have a list of qualified contractors, and so long as they are on the list, then they can join in the tender. So you're sure that there'll be competition? Yes. Yes, Ms. Chen Yun Han. Indeed, my question is related to what Mr. Wong Kwok Heng just asked. He referred to 4 locations, and then the Undersecretary then said that, well, I think the biggest confusion right now is, Chairman, I'm from the District Council. I'm also sitting on this council. I've also referred this to the Transport Panel. In fact, according to what the administration is proposing, in fact, that would be separated into 3 parts. One would be minor works for the District Council, and then slope projects, and then for this one is under Capital Works program. So who is going to do the coordination so that it will be easier for us to understand? Or else you can also distribute it to all the 18 districts, because when I discuss with my District Council colleagues, we also have to separate the different types. Well, we support these projects and Mr. Wong raised this is not incidental, because when I was sitting on the District Council, people asked this, and last time when I was sitting on the Transport Panel, other members also have similar queries, and therefore, well, for facilities requiring lifts and so on, you will have to tell them exactly under which types of projects they are, so that people will have no confusion. Mr. Yao, well, it's very simple. Well, for what we're discussing today under the Capital Works Reserve Fund, in fact, we are talking about footbridges and also pedestrian subways. They should already have been included, but then they have not entirely met the requirements under the barrier-free access requirements. But then under the new term of government, under the new policy, whether there is any gradient involved, we will still be installing lifts in order to facilitate the access by the disabled and also the elders, and that's why for the funding requests in this paper, that can be classified under that category. I agree that at the district level, for some elders and also for some people with disabilities, they might need some pedestrian aids, for example, when they go uphill. That would be more convenient, but then for that particular types of project, well, within the THB, we also have another type of project to deal with those, but then those projects would be larger in scale. For example, if it involves slopes, because it is about slope safety, that will have to be considered, and also because of the scale of the project, which is more sizable, and therefore we will have to conduct more local consultation, and therefore we have another set of scoring system to do the calculation. I do understand that at the district level, well, their raw pedestrians is about more convenient access, and therefore they will find it more confusing. But then we are actually looking at them as 2 separate types of projects, so that in dealing with such projects, it will be more easy for us to deal with them. But then it doesn't mean that we will ignore those escalators going uphill, but then still it will be under the same policy bureau, that is the Transport and Housing Bureau. Ms. Chen Yun Han, well, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng is not in the room. He has gone upstairs to meet with some deputations. Well, he's here, I think. Well, the message that I'm giving to the Undersecretary is very clear. All right, the people have a lot of aspirations or expectation on these projects. Well, you might categorize them under different categories. Well, within the bureau, you might find it easy to understand. But then for the public, they would expect something to come out from the pledge by Mr. C.Y. Leung in July. So for the different categories, you have to list them all out. It's like in the forms of this council. All right, you can classify them under different categories, but then you will have to list out all the items for the 18 districts so that people will know it immediately. They are not bothered by the category that you've classified them, but so long as they can know, or so long as they can tell what projects will be implemented in their districts, is okay. Yes? Well, I understand that there are 2 sets of system, in particular for escalators on slopes and also for the provisioning of lifts and escalators for footbridges and so on, we can understand it. But then for the slopes scoring system, indeed the progress has been very slow. We might be talking about 10 or 8 projects, but then sometimes we may have to wait for years before they can be implemented. But then other than the fact that we are able to increase the funding for this, I think many members of the public would also like to see an expedition of the projects for slope-related projects. They want to see some improvements. For example, taking the islands as an example, they do not have any footbridges nor subways, so all they need is to have more facilities. And also in Shackley, they also have some public housing built along the hillside, and therefore they would also like to have more barrier-free access. So please, Under Secretary, you are here to listen to our views, and please see if you are able to convey these views to the administration so that for facilities on slopes, those can also be expedited, or else that would not just provide convenience for people, and in some cases that may not be fair to some of the districts concerned. All right, this has nothing to do with the item under discussion. All right, with regard to the new policy proposed by the administration, of course, we do pin high hopes on this, and we hope that that can be done as quickly as possible. Ms. Emily Lau, Chairman, I'd like to know this because the EOC has already published a report on barrier-free access. So, have you already covered all the recommended facilities recommended by the EOC? As you've just said, most of these would be in government buildings and on government sites. But then for the rest, that would take time. But then I hope that after consulting the district councils, you should consolidate the information and then submit it to this council so that we will know the views of the district council. And just now, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng also said that he would like to get a checklist from you. I think to be more comprehensive, when you submit your paper to the FC, can you also append that list instead of just giving us Annex C1, because C1 only tells us how many facilities there will be in individual districts. So can you give us a comprehensive checklist? Is that possible? Under Secretary, on the first questions asked by Ms. Lau, in fact, we have already not just complied fully with the requirement of the District Council. In fact, we have done more. With regard to the checklist that Ms. Lau just requested, well, earlier on, we took time to consolidate that, and we will try to come up with this list before the 13th, but then when we go to the FC, we'll try to include that list. And also for the District Council, after collecting their views, can you come back and report to us? Yes, last time they already agreed that they would do so. Yes, we are aware of members' concerns. We understand that is a public concern too. So in due course, we'll come back to the relevant panel, that is the transport panel, to report on the progress. Yes, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng? Chairman, as Ms. Lau rightly pointed out, because of the time gap or time, well, just now I walked up my office and I asked my colleague to take up the paper dated December the 13th. I'm waiting for that to reach me. I just like to point out that fact that is in the government's paper with regard to the checklist that we requested, and if you can include that in a paper for the FC, then that would not have caused our concern, because I'm waiting for my colleague to deliver the paper to me, and I'll be asking more questions after I've got it. But then with regard to the checklist, when you consult the District Council, and if the District Council raise any objection or criticism against you, or if there is any omission, then how are you going to deal with that? Under Secretary, Chairman, of course, if the District Council, when we consult them, when we discuss with them as to the priorities of the projects in the district, for example, if they think that a particular project will have to go ahead first in order to meet the local community's interests, and of course we will listen to their views. But then I'd like to stress that for this particular list, under the UAP, we are actually connecting these facilities with the existing pedestrian facilities like footbridges and subways and so on. But then if it goes beyond this scope, then that will have to be dealt with under another category of project. It will not be covered by the UAP. Chairman, I'd like to ask a follow-up then. All right, what we have seen is the checklist has just arrived, okay? So I'd like to know, let's say if there is a list, have you included the footbridges are built by the Transport Department in the past, as there's no lift connection, and as a result, the footbridge might remain idle, and it's quite a waste of resources. And as a result, many street dwellers will just be using it for different activities. Some might even have stayed there. It's like in North Point, King's Road and Tong Shui Road's junction. So this is happening. So have you dealt with that?
Chairman, concerning the details, I will ask my colleague from Highway Department to respond. But a brief response is that all these recommendations have come from our citizens or community members. We will discuss with them further. We understand that they know better the local situation. So I think it is better that they discuss with the local people. Mr. Lam? Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question. Under this project, we will first consider accessibility. In other words, how the users may enjoy the facilities in a convenient manner. As for what was mentioned by Mr. Wong, especially for the project in North Point, we are aware that the usage rate is quite low and there are some homeless people using the facilities. I think we will closely liaise with the district councils. We'll consider your views and see if we should handle this project as a priority project. As for the homeless people using the facilities, we will try to see how we can better deal with it. Chairman, if I don't have this list, I wouldn't know how ridiculous this is. Queen's Road near North Point Road is almost completed. Now it's appearing on the list. And Tong Shui Road project is not here. That is exactly where homeless people are sleeping. It's because you did not give us the list. That's why I had to follow up. Thank God I pressed the button before it was too late. Already completed ones are appearing on the list, and those not completed are nowhere to be seen. Outrageous. Mr. Lau, can you explain? Thank you, Chairman. It is already completed, being used already on North Point Road, but not the one on Tong Shui Road. Well, the one on North Point Road is under construction. It's being used. I've lived in North Point for decades. Stop telling lies. Allow me to explain. The one on North Point Road, one side is completed and under use. The other side, because of some underground facilities that need to be relocated, we don't need the elevator on the other side. If you come down from Chang'an Street, you don't know what you're doing. Mr. Lau, go back and check this again. As for the one on Tong Shui Road, we have provided the list according to the recommendations of the local people. We would not incorporate items not recommended by local people. I support the paper in principle, but I urge the director to meet with me after the meeting. Why are you incorporating completed projects onto the list? Chairman, allow me to supplement. Concerning this list, there are two things. First, they come from the views of the local people. Whether it is feasible, we have to further discuss. Secondly, we are mentioning the locations. Sometimes people see only one escalator or one elevator, they want a second one. So there could be some existing facilities, but they do not fully satisfy the demand of the local people. So with this list, we are not saying that the facilities do not exist on those locations at all. HF 84, it is already being operated. So how can you come to electrical with such mistakes? I strongly demand that at the junction of King's Road and Township Road, there should be an item incorporated. Okay, so you have already heard Mr. Wong loud and clear. If it is convenient for you, please go on a site visit with Mr. Wong. If there are no other questions or views, I will... Mr. Fernando Chan, I hope that you would be concise. Please press a button if you would like to speak. In this fund, there are many items included, including the UA program. And other barrier-free projects, and all these are good things. But in the past, when such works were being considered, we seldom gave thoughts to barrier-free facilities near hospitals. I urge the administration to consider this element in the future so that the environment near hospitals will truly be barrier-free. People with disabilities, elderly people due to aging population, and the chronically ill people, it's difficult for them to go to some hospitals because some hospitals are located on hilly areas. They only have the choice of taking a minibus. If they're on a wheelchair, they have to rely on rehab buses, and you know it is difficult to book a rehab bus. Number of rejections per year, more than 10,000. So if the nearby transportation is convenient plus barrier-free access, they are very important. So far, we have not seen any progress in this area. So when you consider small-scale public works, please give higher priority, such as at Queen Margaret's Hospital, and also the Children's Hospital near Sandy Bay. Accessibility has been a huge problem, and there's been a lack of progress. Okay, the transport panel has already received Mr. Jones' comment. When you consider the facilities, please give more thoughts. If there are no questions from other members, we will put this item to the vote. We will put a vote to head 701 to 711. For those who support, for those who object, I announce that this item is endorsed. I would like to mention the list should be attached to the paper, and the Undersecretary already agreed. Please place the correct list there. I'm not saying that we have to single it out, but if I see it, I may raise some opinion. So please provide the correct information to Electrical. Alright, let's move on to the next item. PWSC 2012-1342 76 TI bus interchanges on Twin Moon Road. This paper is to propose to increase the approved project estimate of 76 TI by 43 million from 162.3 million to 205.3 million in money of the day prices. On the 16th of November, the Transport Panel has already been consulted, and members in general supported this item. So concerning the discussion carried out on the 16th of November, I would like to inform you that in principle, members supported the funding application, and they urged the administration to complete the project as soon as possible, and also urged the administration to talk to the bus company to launch interchange concession schemes and monthly tickets and provide more routes to that interchange station. Members also expressed concern over ventilation facilities and shading facilities. Members also urged the government to provide the number of low-platform buses using that interchange station. All the necessary information has been provided to the members. According to their supplementary information, 216 buses will use this station, and 40% of them will be low-platform buses. Now we will take questions. Mr. Albert Chen? First, I would like to say that I welcome the provision of a permanent toilet. That is a very good arrangement. But I do not see one thing, despite the fact that I have raised this point repeatedly, concerning the design. I hope such interchange stations, buses and taxis can allow passengers to alight and get off. In various places like Chiang Mai Bridge and also places outside of tunnel entrances, especially near the Cross Harbour Tunnel, all such taxi spots do not allow passengers to alight. So it is very inconvenient to passengers. So at places near interchanges, there should be drop-off and get-on spots for buses and taxis. I'm just wondering if they are being provided. I remember the last transport panel, Mr. Chen already raised a similar point. Under Secretary, in terms of our design, we allow buses and taxis to drop off the passengers and also allow passengers to alight. Can you tell us where? And what about on Chiang Mai Bridge? Perhaps there should be drop-off and get-on area for private cars. Currently, there are no such facilities along Chiang Mai Bridge, but that is not directly related. I don't want to have any disputes in the future. So there will be such facilities. What about the locations? Maybe after the meeting. Maybe the director can tell you where. Tuen bound side, there's a car park in Thailand. It's like a U-shaped space. So private cars can have this place as a drop-off area. And then you see two arrows. The lower one would be for the buses and the other one will be for private vehicles for drop-off and alight. Perhaps I can explain to you further after the meeting. So people can gain access to Tuen Mun Road very conveniently, right? Instead of taking huge detours, it is like a roundabout. So it is very easy to gain access. Perhaps you can give me a paper after the meeting. Thank you. And I hope that the TD and Transport Bureau, before the completion of the bus interchange, they can please make a final decision on the fare adjustment. Ms. Emily Lau. I support this paper, Chairman, as long as they care about what we care about. According to Enclosure 1, Chairman, I support Mr. Albert Chen concerning drop-off in a light area. And we should do something similar near any interchange facilities in the future. What about the ladies' washroom? And in Enclosure 1, in B, it says that there will be an elevator, but not in A. Can you explain? And what about this mobile toilet? We need it, but it only appears in A, in B, but not A. What about the digital electronic display board? Is that something new? Is that a new facility? Or is it appearing elsewhere already? Concerning the actual arrangement for the washroom, Director? Thank you. Concerning the toilet facilities, for the female's toilet, there are 4 cubicles and 2 cubicles for the male's toilet and 4 urinals, and also 1 toilet for disabled people. As for the escalator or elevator, to Kowloon bound side, it is a horizontal transfer. You don't need escalator or elevator. For the Tuen Mun bound side, it is going to be of a higher level than Castle Peak Road, and there is going to be some difference in terms of height, and there may be escalator or elevator to bring passengers to both directions.
With regard to the display screen, I'll defer to the Transport Department. Yes, please. Well, with regard to the electronic display screen, well, at the BBI, for passengers waiting there can be some real-time transport information, for example, the traffic condition on Tuen Mun Road, so that they can consider alternative routes. With regard to the bus companies, they would also provide some display screen to show exactly how much time will be required before the next bus will arrive, and that's a rather innovative way of displaying the information. So it's already a policy to have display screens wherever is possible at bus stops, and also for the pick-up and drop-off points. Is that also a policy for at the interchanges, and also for the access for the disabled? Well, for those with visual impairment, they have no idea as to which bus is coming. So can there be announcement systems or PA system at the bus stops? Do you have such a policy? Yes, thank you, Ms. Lau. With regard to electronic displays at BBIs, we try as far as possible to provide them, because with such displays, that would provide convenience to the waiting passengers. In the future BBIs, we will try to provide such facilities as far as possible. As regards those audio equipment, making the announcement as to which bus will be coming, for those with visual impairment, we will have to consider that more carefully. Yes, I understand that on other locations, those with visual impairment have already made this request, and they hope that at other bus stops in the urban area, such facilities can be provided. But then we will have to review that in greater detail before we come up with any further information. I think for the last request that has already been made for a long time, and recently we have also been to the UN, and we already provided the information, and this afternoon you're going to have a public hearing, and with the new facilities coming up, and if you're not going to provide those at these new facilities, then how can we expect you to retrofit the old bus stops with such facilities? Yes, we will consider that. So obviously you're not able to do it for this batch of projects, right? Well, for Tuen Mun Road Kowloon bound on the 26th this month, it's going to be commissioned, and at the bus stop we have already included many new facilities there. We will also have to assess the usage rate and also satisfaction by the users of these facilities, and if there is any new suggestion, then we can include that in the facility. But then with regard to the facility to be commissioned on the 26th of this month, that might not be possible. Yes, please try to do it as far as possible. Mr. Tam Yu Chong, Chairman, with regard to the BBI, to have permanent toilets, of course that's good. Indeed, that was also a very strong demand from the District Council. As far as I understand it, in 2012 December, you're going to complete that, in particular for the Kowloon bound Tuen Mun Road BBI, and that would be commissioned to the public. And I understand that during the Christmas period, you're trying to test run the facility to see if is popular, but then I hope that the preparation work can be done properly, because as soon as passengers board the bus, when they want to interchange to another bus, they'll be in a rush, and in particular during the initial period they might not know exactly what to do and where to go. You will have to make sure that there will be proper guidance and so on, or else that will become very controversial. And also with regard to the permanent toilets, well, in the course of the construction works, will there be any impact? Because after all, well, for people using the BBI while the works are underway, will there be a lot of noise? Will that affect the users? So for all the arrangements that will be put in place, please do publicize them. Please do think harder about how that should be implemented. Well, during the Christmas holidays, not many people will be going to work using the facility, but then after the holiday period, well, more people will be using them. And I'll also go there myself, in particular during the morning peak hours. I'll see if there are any problems. So please, Director, please pay more attention to that. All right, Transport Department, any response? Yes, thank you, Mr. Tam, for your views. In fact, in publicity and public education, we have already prepared some posters and also booklets. We have already distributed them to different housing estates in Tuen Mun and the Tuen Mun Town Centre. We have also put up large banners to inform the residents that for Tuen Mun Road, Kowloon bound BBI on the 26th of December, it will be commissioned. With regard to more details as to the bus routes and also the bus fares and so on, well, in a booklet and also on the webpage of the Transport Department, we have a dedicated page giving all the details, and also on the day of commissioning and during the initial period, in particular after the Christmas holidays. Well, during the first couple of days, the Emergency Coordination Center of the Transport Department will be monitoring the situation closely, and also the bus operators during the first few days of operation. They will also be deploying staff at the bus terminal in Tuen Mun and also the major stops in Tuen Mun to inform people that with regard to the Tuen Mun BBI is already been commissioned. And also at the BBI, the bus operator will also be deploying staff to help the passengers as to how they should make use of the interchange. But what about the display? And also, will the toilet works affect the BBI's operation? Well, thank you, Chairman. Well, basically, other than the toilets at the BBI, all of the other facilities have been completed, and therefore on the road there shouldn't be any further works. There might be some landscaping works that are still underway, but then the principle is that we'll complete everything in order not to affect the opening of the BBI. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Thank you, Chairman. I support the installation of public toilets at the BBI, and also I hope that the BBI can be commissioned as soon as possible. But then in para 12 of the paper, you talk about some unforeseen soil conditions resulting in the rise in the construction cost by some $10 million. So I'd like to know more about this. For the unforeseen soil condition or site conditions, is that a very common phenomenon? Because usually you should have undertaken or conducted site investigation before works commence. So is it that in the initial report there was certain omission resulting in the estimate being flawed? That's the first point. And the second point is, I understand that you also have some energy saving measures for the public toilet. I think the location is quite good. Will you consider retrofitting some solar panels there? Because you're talking about a one-level or one-story building, and is also unblocked in terms of the surrounding areas. So given the cottage type public toilet, actually you can also retrofit it with solar power facility, because such energy efficiency facilities will help in saving energy consumption in the long run. Yes, thank you. With regard to the site conditions, first of all, let's talk about the site conditions. Well, with regard to the rock layer, well, it changes very rapidly. We do have a very steep rock layer underground. And actually, both ourselves and the consultant have been very careful, because at present there is already a bridge on the ground, and we took out some soil samples for investigation, and we also bore additional holes in order to conduct further investigation to find out that for areas away from the bridge, how deep would the rock layer be. But then despite all that, when we actually started works on the ground, we found out that the rock layer became very steep very rapidly, and as a result of that, when we bore certain piles, the length will have to be a lot longer in order to reach different layers of rock, and therefore those were the unforeseen site conditions, resulting in our use of longer piles in order to deal with the site situation or the site condition there. So as Mr. Wu just said, well, for all such projects, we would always carry out site investigations beforehand, but then such site investigations might not enable us to know all the conditions on the ground. But then, as I just explained, we already did what we could have done. We already did it very carefully. We believe that it should have been rather representative, but then unfortunately, when works actually started, it was not like what we had expected. So was it a very common phenomenon? Well, that did happen, but that is not very common. And also, as Mr. Wu also talked about energy efficiency, in fact, we haven't started the design for the toilet yet. Well, in principle, we'll try to come up with environmentally friendly designs, and we will take on board Mr. Wu's suggestion. I'd like to follow up on this. It's about site investigation. Well, it involves whether or not certain project would be feasible. For example, the railway station at Chiwanshan, because your site investigation said that there would be soft rock layer, and as a result, it's not possible, it's not suitable for the construction of that station. But then if the investigation report is not trustworthy, then when we decide whether or not a project should commence or whether or not we should accept the administration's recommendation, then we might think otherwise. And I therefore hope that the administration, in conducting such site investigation, you will have to be more careful in order to ensure that they are closer to reality instead of what has happened in a paper. That is, the actual situation on the ground is very different from what you had expected. Mr. Low? Yes, I support the proposed expansion of the scope of works for this project, in particular the installation of a permanent toilet. I think it provides convenience to the public. As many members have said, they are in support of this. But then I do have some questions about the construction cost for this toilet. So how does it compare with part or previous toilets? And also in para 17, you said that with regard to the proposed toilet, there are a number of energy saving or efficient facilities, and so all these would save energy. But then should there be standard facilities? Because here apparently there are additional facilities over and above the existing specifications. But then for such energy saving facilities, that should have been one of your basic considerations, and therefore I'd just like to clarify this with you. Will they become more standard provisions? And also for T5 tubes, well, when compared to LED bulbs, in terms of cost it might be better, but then with LED light bulbs being further improved, and the cost has already come down. So in choosing energy efficient lighting, LED should be one of your considerations. You should be more flexible about this in order to install energy efficient facilities. Yes, please take on board that view. Yes, Ms. Alex Mack, I do have a question. It's about the cost comparison. You will have to answer the question. And second, is that already a standard facility? Because here apparently you are citing this as an additional facility. I'd just like to say this to members. We are talking about a specific project item. That's why I was asking about the details about this project. Well, for policy considerations, you don't necessarily have to raise that under this item. But of course, after you have asked the question, I'll try to see if members are or the administration is able to give you an answer. Mr. Lau? Well, I'll be brief. With regard to the construction cost for the toilet, is about the same as other toilets. With regard to the energy efficiency or energy saving facilities, we'll try to do that as far as possible. But then for T5 tubes and also for LED lights, well, we are actually making the comparison. In fact, the purposes or the functions will be more or less the same. But then for LED lights, it's about 10 times the price for other facilities, and therefore we will conduct some analysis and then we'll decide what types of tubes will be used.
Ms. Alice Mack, I'm happy to support this project, especially since a permanent toilet is to be provided according to the District Council's suggestion. The toilet is to be provided a year after the interchange is commissioned. We see the director from FHD today. So can you, before the setting up of the permanent toilet, make sure that the mobile toilet is clean? Many people criticize mobile toilets, especially women, because they are very dirty. So I would like to urge you to pay more attention to the hygiene condition of the mobile toilet. As for the display boards, I hope that the TD will closely monitor such display boards. We understand that some buses already have such display boards, so the passengers are aware of the timing needed for the next bus. But is it accurate? That is important. So after setting up the display board, please make sure that you will closely monitor the accuracy of the information provided. Thirdly, at the interchange, I see some display boards, but I wonder where the buses will actually go. Are you going to set up signages at different interchanges, especially the busy ones going through Shingwen Tunnel or Cross Harbour Tunnel? The locations of different routes may not be very clear. People feel very confused. So, are you going to provide better signages at this interchange, direction of queues, and so on and so forth? Perhaps you can answer the last question, Ms. Kwan. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Mack. Facilities to be provided at this interchange are very diversified. For example, we are going to provide some shelters and also signages guiding passengers to take the right bus. We will show clearly where passengers should queue, which direction they can move towards. We have already learned from previous experience. Mr. Michael Tian? Thank you, Chairman. Last time at the panel meeting, I mentioned the biggest problem for buses is missing the schedule, and they said that they would do something from the terminal. Well, doing something at the terminal is not useful. We need to carry out some monitoring all over Hong Kong. And whether this interchange is going to be successful or is it going to be a failure, as Ms. Mack had said, the display boards have to tell you how much time you need to spend on waiting for the next bus. But by the time you see the board, you have already left the original bus. What if it says 1 hour? So it is about controlling the frequency of the buses. I strongly demand the government to monitor the bus companies, not just do monitoring at the terminals, but for every route there should be a pledge on average waiting time. All data should be publicized. This is not a normal bus stop. If you are too impatient, you can walk away and try other options, but no other options here. If you miss the frequency schedule, there will be serious problems. You need to spend some time to monitor the operation of this interchange instead of waiting for people to file complaints. There may be some improvement in the next few days, but then things will go back to the situation as before. So this is about operation of the bus interchange, not directly related to the works. Next, Mr. Fernando Zhou. Of course, I support this item. I also agree with Ms. Emily Lau. For people with visual disability or blind people, when they are waiting at such interchanges, it's very difficult. Since this is a new project, Chairman, they have an IT system or information system making it more advanced than other interchanges. I strongly hope that the government would consider, even for people with visual disabilities, you need to provide the information as well. That is lacking at other facilities. We know this is pressing in terms of timing. If you are to go ahead with this project, or at least as a pilot scheme, if it is successful, you can promote it to other public transport interchanges. This is very important. Will the government consider it? Ms. Guan. Thank you, Chairman. The views from Mr. Zheng is well understood. When we responded to Ms. Lau, we also said that we will take this back and seriously consider it. But this is about to be commissioned soon, so the facilities may not be provided right away, but we will seriously consider your views. After consideration, let us know. Go back to transport panel. Okay? Hong Kong bus stops are different. We may accommodate multi-routes at the same station. If you have an audio system, people who have disabilities may not know which one is for which bus. So technically speaking, go back and look into it and submit a report to us, okay? Finally, Ms. Emily Lau. Yes, I want the government to look into this. If this is to be submitted to Finance Committee, there should be a paragraph telling us the results. You have raised a real issue, and I urge the administration to talk to people with visual disabilities. It is a big interchange. There are many routes around. How can you make the arrangements? Chairman, my question was about the temporary toilet. I did not hear the answer. According to enclosure 1, there's the toilet in inset B but not in inset A. Am I reading it wrong? And low platform buses can also use this interchange? Mr. Lau? Thank you, Chairman. Allow me to explain. Yes, there are toilets on both sides. Yes? And also low platform buses can use the facilities? Yes. There are mobile toilets on both sides. What about low platform buses? They can use the facilities? Yes. 40% of the buses using this interchange will be low platform buses. 40% not enough. We want more. But they can use the facility, yes? Yes. If there are no further questions, we will now put this item to the vote. For those who support, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those who object. Chairman, again, I support, but please attach the information we want to the paper. Thank you. Next item, PWSC 2012-1341. 8190H Traffic Improvements to Tin Wing Road Town Center section. This paper is to propose to increase the approved project estimate of 8190H by 153.5 million from 1,814.4 million to 1,967.9 million in money of the day prices. The administration consulted the transport panel on the 16th of November. Members in general supported the proposal. We have with us from the administration Mr. Yao and his team. I will introduce them one by one. At the transport panel meeting, members in principle supported the application concerning 3 footbridges that need to be provisioned. There are no ramps provided. Members urged the government to consider if that is in line with local needs. Members also requested further information to spell out the cost for noise barriers or noise enclosures in terms of vertical greening and greening on top of the shelters, and how much will be taken up by such works. All the information has been provided to us. Any questions? I would like to ask a question about Para 12. These are the elements causing the higher than expected awarded tender price because of higher oil price and strict land restrictions and very busy transportation or busy traffic, pushing up the awarded tender price. So this is again something outside of your expectation. Can you explain further? How come a lot has been added all of a sudden? Who would like to take this? Well, indeed, this is out of our expectation. When we did a budget, normally we would refer to the latest contract prices as the fundamental consideration. We'll also consider anything special about this contract. This is at a very busy site, and all these are projections. Whether the contractors would carry out the work at that price level really depends on the market conditions. And we are not fully grasping such information like they are. If a number of larger construction works are to be launched around the same time, the contractor will consider the shortage in supply of workers, and the salary they need to offer may have to go up, whether they can carry out the works with cheap equipment. So contractors will consider the actual situation when they submit the tender price. That is the standard practice. So we may not fully grasp the latest situation. But these are government projects, not like private projects where there are unforeseeable factors. Because this is construction in a busy site, why will it become more expensive? And what about working time restrictions? Because all these are pushing up the tender price. Concerning working hours, the TD and the police have consulted the DC. We have consulted the DC and those 2 government departments. During peak hours, we have to maintain the same number of lanes. So a lot of the work can only be carried out at night time when we close certain lanes. So that will affect the working hours. So manpower, equipment at night time will have different considerations. I agree, Chairman, because it's very busy. You cannot close the road. That will lead to congestion. But you were already aware of that before launching the project. You talked about different projects taking place at the same time. They are also government projects, but not other people's projects. And all of a sudden you realize there's a lot of competition. Chairman, that is right. We know we would continue to launch a number of projects.
But then we expected that we would only be rolling out several medium-sized projects, and according to our estimates, the prices would not have gone up that fast. But then, of course, that would also depend on whether there would be many contractors who would be willing to take up so many projects in one go, and they will have to put in their bids. And also, in terms of the competitiveness of a particular bid, that would depend on how many contractors who would be willing to join the competition for this particular project. And very often, if we manage to get some lower tender prices, that's because the contractors might be engaged in some other projects nearby, and therefore they might have an edge over the others, and that's why, as a result, they might be able to put in lower bids, and as a result, the bidding price would come down. And if they do not have this particular edge over the others, and in terms of the equipment, the machinery, and also their manning power or staffing level, they would also put in their bids in accordance with those situations. All right, you talk about higher than expected awarded tender price, and there are some explanations, but then for contractors that are able to take up projects costing some $2 billion, how many are there? Can you provide information to us? And second, well, with regard to the arrangements of these projects, well, undeniably, government's arrangement would affect the manning situation within the entire industry. That might result in some short supply of manpower. So how are you able to ensure that the workload will be more evenly distributed so that there would not be some bunching effect resulting in higher costs, so that for those aspiring candidates wanting to join the profession, they might not dare to join because they are concerned about the distribution of works and so on. Because of the fluctuation in the demand, that would also affect or inhibit some people who might want to join the profession or the industry. Yes, to answer Mr. Wu's question, well, competition has been rather healthy because for projects costing some $2 billion, well, for Cat C contractors, they can put in their bids, and if you look at the list, we have several dozen of them on the list, and therefore there is no question of a lack of competitors wanting to put in their bids. And also in terms of the workload and the number of projects available, well, I think the members' view is correct. But then we also have to bear in mind this, that is at the community level, there are also many suggestions hoping that we can press ahead with our projects as quickly as possible. But then the way we deal with that, well, we have also talked to the construction industry council, and according to the council, they would like to increase the manpower so that there can be more workers joining the profession, and then there will be more manpower available. Earlier on, we also came to this council and we did ask for additional funding so that the CRC will be able to step up publicity to attract more people to join the profession. And at present, if you look at the training courses offered by the CIC, some 60% of them are actually below 35, so they have been able to attract some new blood to join the profession already. And we hope that they can continue with this effort, and we will work closely with them in order to step up such publicity. Thank you. Alright, if there are no further questions from members, then I'll put this item to the vote. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Thank you. Those against, please raise their hands. I think this item is approved and supported by members present, so I declare this item approved. Next, Head 704, Drainage, PWSC 2012-13-40, Sewage at Clearwater Bay Road, Pek Shoi San Shun and west of Sai Kung Town. The item is to invite members to recommend to the FC to increase the approved project estimate of this project by $68.4 million from $290.6 million to $359 million in money of the day prices. On the 26th of November, the environmental panel was consulted, and the relevant paper has been submitted to members for your information. And we have the Director for Drainage and his colleagues from the administration to answer members' questions. I do not propose to read out their names, and I'd like to defer to the chairman of the EA panel, Ms. Sit-Ho, to brief you on the details of the deliberation by the EA panel. Chairman, this is a request for supplementary provision because the original project has been approved, but then now they're asking for some $68.4 million as additional funding, and that would mean that the project cost will increase from $290.6 million to $359 million. Members at the panel supported the proposal, and they explained that because the bidding prices have gone beyond the expected price, that's because it's a very hilly terrain, because it's in the rural area of Sai Kung, and there would be access difficulty. And also with regard to the restrictions on traffic along Clearwater Bay Road, that would also be more, and therefore the risk factor would also be higher than expected. And some members also asked the administration how come they had not borne that in mind in coming up with the approved project estimate, and the administration said that they just followed the situations for similar projects in preparing the project estimate, but then it's not like what is happening here, and therefore members asked that in considering similar projects in the future, they would also have to consider the actual situation on the ground before coming up with the project estimate, so that the estimate could be more accurate. Yes, Ms. Emily Lau. Yes, I'd like to follow up on the point raised by Ms. Ho just now. I'm not a member of the EA panel. I think the administration might be a bit too hasty in coming up with the estimate. Well, you have not taken into account the situation on the ground, and as a result, you will have to come up with this proposal for additional funding. And have you considered retendering the project, because in the two earlier papers you have not asked for it? How come on this occasion you have considered this, but then subsequently you decided against it? So can you explain to us what factors have been taken into account in your consideration? Yes? In preparing the contract estimate, other than making reference to similar projects in the past and also the construction costs for those projects, we have also borne in mind the fact that because of the site in question, the site conditions might be somewhat different. That's why we have already factored that in, and we have already increased the cost estimate by a particular margin, so that we would be able to cope with the difficult site conditions here. But then the additional cost estimate might not have fully reflected the actual situation on the ground in the market. That's why the bidding price that we got in the end was somewhat higher than we had expected. So in the future, we will have to be more careful about this, so that we can do our estimate more accurately. And when the bidding prices came back, when they are somewhat higher than we had expected, we also consider the mitigation methods. For example, in terms of the sections where works will take place, we can put in place better arrangements? And also in terms of the scope of works, can we make some modifications? And also the modus operandi, can that also be modified? And all that has been considered, including what Ms. Lau just said. Can there be a retendering of the project? We have also considered that as a possibility. But then, with regard to the retendering of the project, in fact, initially, when we issue the tender documents, for those who are qualified to undertake such drainage projects, there were 36 such contractors. And that also show that there is competition in the market. But then if you look at the prices that we have received, or the quotations that we have received, they are still higher than expected. And if we go for another tendering exercise, the prices that we may get might not come down significantly so that they would be within our budget. Therefore, we are of the view that there is no need for us to go for another round of tendering, and we are just asking for supplementary provision. We hope that you will agree to that. Chairman, of course, I would of course welcome the administration's attempt to resort to different ways and means to cut down the cost. But then, coming back to this point, if these had been beyond your expectation, and as a result the prices have been higher than expected, you will have to understand why. It doesn't mean that the prices must be right. I would have expected that your estimate would always be accurate. But then sometimes there are bound to be situations whereby the prices might be higher than expected. And of course, I understand that your analysis should have been very scientific and objective already, right? Yes, Chairman, when we did our estimates, because of the different types of the project, we would basically look at previous contracts and the bidding prices that we received in the past for similar projects. We try to be as closely aligned to the market as possible. But then in this particular project and in this particular contract, we have also noted that, in Sai-Kung, in some of the villages, there are hilly terrains whereby there would be level difference, and also for the village access roads, sometimes the roads are rather narrow. And in this situation, in our estimates, we have already come up with a particular estimate so that a particular margin would be added to the overall estimate. And you also refer to the location in Clearwater Bay where works will take place is a very busy junction, and because of this foreseen difficulty, we have already put in more buffer. But then, despite all that, there is still a discrepancy between what we expected and the prices that we got. Well, for this particular section of Clearwater Bay Road, because of the busy traffic, we would only be able to carry out works from 10 to 4 during the day, and at other times we will have to deck up the road again in order to maintain smooth traffic. And therefore, if we start works at 10, then we will have to remove the decking, and then after 4 we will also have to repave it. And as a result, the hours that we can work on it would be very limited every day. And that would also be reflected in the bidding price that we receive, because they would rather on the safe side, and that can only be done with a more reasonable price. That's the reason. Yes, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, I noticed that in para 7, it emphasizes that, the price has been higher than expected. That's because more risk allowance would have to be allowed for. Well, when the tender prices turn out to be higher than expected, so during the works period, and also in terms of the manpower resources that will have to be put into it, so that would also be given to the department. And can you confirm that they are actually not asking for too high a price? Because basically you've already confirmed that if you look at the actual contract, the manpower resources that would be required would be adequate. And have you confirmed that what they're proposing is reasonable? Yes, as I just said, in our estimates, the works conditions would be somewhat more difficult. That's why on the pre-tendering assessment, well, we might have underestimated the difficulty, and as a result, the tender prices that we got were higher than expected. In terms of the manpower that will be required, well, within Sai-Kung villages, we already estimated that it would be somewhat more labor-intensive because the accesses would be more narrow, and under those circumstances, we also had to ensure that villagers would be able to meet their needs for going in and coming out of their villages. That's why smaller machinery will have to be used, and in some cases we might actually have to resort to manual labor, and as a result we believe that it would be more labor intensive. Also, at present in the construction sector is a rather robust situation.
So the salary level has been adjusted upward. When the contractor submitted the price, they have done estimation concerning number of people needed. They would be prudent in such estimation. That is what we believe. So we are guessing if the final human resources are not fully utilized, can we get any refund? We would estimate how much real work has been done. So we do not just calculate how many people are working on site, and of course they have the actual manpower to calculate utilities or equipment used on site. So they will make the necessary arrangements instead of just counting how many people will be on site and the equipment to be used. There will be the payment based on the actual manpower used. Without further questions, I will put this item to the vote. For those who support, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those who object, I believe this is endorsed by our members. Let's enter the next item. I would like to remind you we have 2 items left. I suggest we extend the meeting time by 15 minutes so that we can deal with all of the items outstanding. This is Head 704 Drainage, Paper 40. The 334 WF. This paper recommend that 334 WF to be upgraded to Cat A at an estimated cost of 6,176.7 million in money of the day prices to enhance the output capacity of the existing typo WTW, upgrading of 2 pumping stations serving typo WTW, expanding freshwater surface reservoir and laying water mains. The development panel has already been consulted, and further information has been submitted by the administration. Members in general support the funding application, and the key points of discussion has already been presented. We have a number of representatives, including Director of Water Supplies from the administration. Actually, the Development Affairs panel already talked about the typo water treatment works. We focused on 3 things of concern. First, the cost effectiveness of the Shatin water treatment works project, whether we can enhance the output of typo facility. What is the estimated level of effectiveness? How can we better deal with the sludge cost in the process? And finally, impact on traffic in Shamshepo and Kowloon City when the water mains are being laid. Mr. Albert Chen, a number of questions. 6.1 billion for this project, that's a huge number. Recently, the construction cost for government projects has been on the rise. Some projects needed to seek supplementary funding. So concerning this projection, perhaps in 2 to 3 years' time, the government will come back and seek supplementary funding. How do you ensure that the expenses would not exceed the original projections? When it comes to the budget of this project compared to similar projects in the past, if we do calculation per square meter, or is it going to be higher, or how much higher? And in para 21, 64 million in tons of inert construction materials or waste will have to go to the landfill. I have already talked about this issue many times. We need to identify as soon as possible sites to handle construction waste. Maybe we can use them for reclamation or release the pressure on our landfills. The government is saying we need more landfills, and then you continue to pour your construction waste onto the landfills. You're damaging everyone. When can the government identify a suitable site for reclamation so that we can dispose of such construction waste instead of bringing them to the landfills? Who would like to take this? We've been talking about this for many years already. Director. In this project, we will expand the reservoir and the water treatment works. So this is design and build contract. We have already completed the tendering exercise. So we only need to do tendering for the pumping stations and surface reservoir. So you can see the breakdowns of the project. The major part will be the water treatment facilities. So we're quite confident in controlling the projections. For the reservoir and pumping stations, we don't have too much reference for water treatment facilities, but more or less we believe it will be comparable, and we have added inflation elements. We're talking about water mains of 900 meters. Per every cubic meter, it is about $90,000. In our maintenance contract, we have comparable figures. As for the landfill issue, typo treatment facilities have limited space, and we need to lay down new structures which will affect the foundation. So we need to dispose of non-inert construction waste. So we will bring them to the landfill sites. As for the major policy of handling landfills, I think Development Bureau will follow up on your demands. Mr. Chen, I've been talking about this for years. This is not the first time I talk about using non-inert construction waste on reclamation, but not dump them on landfills. If you continue to use landfills to handle the non-inert construction waste, I may vote it down, because I've been talking about this for so many years and you have made zero progress. If you anticipate that there will be some reclamation needed, you can bring the construction waste there. This is a win-win situation, and the government agrees that this is a good direction. But you have made zero progress, so this is the ultimatum for you. Next time you come back with another paper saying the same thing, I will vote it down. Permanent Secretary, Madam Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to clarify that very often in public works, there would be construction materials or waste created. The government's policy is that when non-inert materials are created, they have to do screening. So things that cannot be reused or recycled will have to go to the landfills. Otherwise, they will be brought to another site and they can be used for other construction projects or reclamation. And our facility already faces great pressure. We have some plan that the fill materials will have to go to Taishan for reclamation. In principle, we totally agree with Mr. Chen, who also referred this to the development panel. Mr. Wu Shiwai? A simple question. The water treatment facility include bringing some drinking water to Kowloon districts. This tender price, well, sometimes when the traffic is busy, the projection of the price may be different at the end. Has this already incorporated foreseeable road level difficulties? So this will more accurately reflect the reality. Concerning the water main works, the biggest one is 1.8 meter in diameter. We will use the method that does not create any trenches. So it is a trenchless method, and it is also more expensive. For Prince Road West and Waterloo Road, very busy sections, there is going to be working hour restrictions. And if we look at the scale of the works, the pipes will only take up a smaller portion, so we have more confidence this time. So there will not be any impact on road level traffic. Concerning the trenchless excavation method, we'll have to set up 2 shafts on both sides, and that will depend on the traffic situation. For the Waterloo Road project, during busy hours, we'll have to cover the trenches with steel plates. We have already done projections accordingly, and the length of the pipes take up a very small portion of the whole project, so we feel more confident this time. If there are no other questions, I will put this item to the vote. For those who support, please raise your hand. Thank you. Those who object, please raise your hands. I believe this item is endorsed by members. Next item. Head 707, New Townsend Urban Area Development, PWSC 43. 753CL, Infrastructure Works for West Kowloon Cultural District, Phase 1, Design Site Investigation. This paper proposes to upgrade 753CL to Cat A at an estimated cost of 178 million in money of the day prices for the proposed design and site investigation of government infrastructural works for supporting Phase 1 of West Kowloon Cultural District development. On the 11th of May and also in November, the administration has already provided relevant documents to our Home Affairs panel. We have our Director of Civil Engineering Development and his team, together with from West Kowloon Cultural District Authority, the Executive Director for Project Delivery is also here with us. The administration has already submitted the paper to Home Affairs panel, but there was no discussion. So I think we need to discuss it at the panel, or under the panel there's a West Kowloon working group. I think it needs to be established because this is a new term of office. This project is very complicated and we need to look at many things. Today we are talking about the design and also site investigation work. If you refer to para 3, Chairman, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, there are many smaller items. Today we won't have time, but perhaps we can talk about the details in another occasion, especially para 10, the accessibility of the site in West Kowloon and how it connects with nearby areas. We should discuss these things at another venue.
I also hope that the subcommittee on WKCD can also invite all members to discuss the matter. And also on the funding request, 14.1(c) says that for the on-cost payable to the WKCDA for management and supervision of the entrusted works, $36.9 million. So would it be undertaken by the MTRCL or which authority? So apparently everybody will be able to pick up a bit of the cost here. So can you explain that a bit more to us? So the WKCD, of course, will not be able to carry out the works on its own. So which party will be entrusted with the works? Can you tell us more about that? Yes. Thank you, Ms. Lau, for your question. She would like to have more discussions in this council. Yes, I believe that that is feasible. And also with regard to the entrustment of works, well, what we are trying to do is within the administration's infrastructure, we try to tie in with the WKCD's development. And of course, there are many development projects at the WKCD, but then the administration's infrastructure would also have to tie in with that development. But then with regard to the scope of works, very often that would be located within the several dozen hectares of land within the WKCD. And also to expedite the works and also to save money, one of the units responsible for the construction can also carry out the entrusted works. That's why you can see that there are many development items at the WKCD, and therefore we do see chances of entrusting some government works to them for the purpose of facilitating the works. That's the arrangement. Yes, Chairman, I understand that. That's why I'm asking you this. Now you're enabling, you're entrusting it to the WKCDA, but then the WKCDA will in turn have to entrust it to somebody else. So it's a multi-layer entrustment. So as a result, there will be multiple layer of works. Will that mean that the cost will actually go up? No, there would not be multiple layer of subcontracting, because the WKCDA will be taking up the projects, but then of course it will have to engage proper contractors and engineers to do the work. But then we will only do it one-off, so that we will ask the WKCDA to entrust or to engage in the works, and therefore there should be no further subcontracting. I hope that the Secretariat will arrange for the setting up of the subcommittee on WKCD. I understand that this will be more complicated. I hope that there can be more explanation given to us at that forum. I support this item. Mr. Albert Chen, there are two questions. One is similar to what I asked earlier. It's about the per square meter cost. Is it similar? And of course, in terms of the design, the cost will be very different. And also, secondly, for the WKCD itself is on reclaimed land, and therefore the site condition should be very clear. I don't know, with regard to the site investigation cost, well, is it an average cost, because I think the site conditions should be very clear to the administration because it's on reclaimed land, and therefore you should have been able to make some savings, right? Yes, basically we will be engaging a consultant to do it, or the CEDD will be doing it itself. And as Ms. Lau just pointed out, in the paper, para 3, we have already set out the details. Well, there will be road works, there will be roads underground, and there will also be water supply systems or drainage facilities, and also related facilities. But then in carrying out such works, yes, Mr. Chen is right, it's on a piece of reclaimed land, but then very often we will have to do some foundation works. And in practice, we will have to carry out some site investigation before we can do a proper design. With regard to the site investigation work, $39 million for that, it will account for a very small percentage of the total cost. Chairman, I don't know if I should, or if that's the way to do it, because if you look at the progress of the works, and also I think when you carry out the reclamation, you should have got reports about the site conditions. You should be very clear about the geotechnical data. And therefore, why do you have to spend so much money on the site investigation, and why have you made that assessment? I raise this question because I'm not an expert in this area. Maybe the administration will have to look into this, and the audit commission may wish to look into this, because we're talking about tens of millions of dollars. Well, let me explain that again, Chairman, because for the per square meter cost, how does it compare with other projects? Yes, Director. For the site investigation, for example, if we have to build flyovers, well, in carrying out the reclamation, well, beneath the reclaimed area, in the soil condition there, in the rock layer there, we will have to conduct further investigation before we can get hold of the sediments information. All right, the entire area is about 40 hectares. I do not have a lot of information about that. WKCDA, do you have anything to add? Yes? Sorry, speaker's not coming through. We haven't got it for the time being. We haven't got it with us. But then, can you tell us the per square meter cost? How does it compare with other projects? All right, once you have the information, please provide it to us. Ms. Sito, thank you, Chairman. All right, this paper is to get some $478 million for the consultant's design work. I agree with what Mr. Albert Chen just said. This is a piece of reclaimed land, and therefore you should have expected what the site conditions are, and maybe the experts can tell us how different it is, and it's been left vacant for a number of years, and therefore all the sediments should have settled. So what conditions do you expect to take place which might warrant further costs? And also in para 14, you also talk about the 3 and 4 is about the contingencies and provision for price adjustments. They are rather shocking. You're talking about some $478 million. So the entire cost is only $478 million, and yet you're talking about a subtotal of over $100 million. So the actual cost on the ground might be rather small. So for contingencies, we often heard that because of the escalating construction costs, and also because of the site conditions, there might be rock cave-ins, and as a result, costs might have gone up. But then not much of this is about the actual works on the ground, and also this is on a piece of reclaimed land. So do we have to have some 17.8%, over $80 million as contingency and provision for price adjustment? We are actually talking about some $36 million as contingency. So can you be more realistic in making that estimate? I think members are concerned that, well, on a reclaimed land, does it mean that we have already got hold of all the foundation information? well, to facilitate or for the purpose of a design work here, it's not adequate because in civil engineering design work, the more information that we can gather about the site condition, the better. But of course, there is no scientific data as to how much information we will need. But then it doesn't mean that the site conditions are special here, because basically, well, on the reclaimed land, we would reclaim it layer by layer. But then for the deeper layer information, we do not have that information with us, and therefore when we carry out works like this, let's say if we're going to build a footbridge or a flyover where towers will have to be built to support the superstructure, then we will have to know right beneath the sea level what's happening and also what the site conditions are, and therefore we will have to carry out in-depth site investigation. And also for contingency and also for provision for price adjustment, well, we have followed the established formula in calculating the contingency and so on. For contingency, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will be used for the site investigation. There are other items which might require more contingency. We will have to use it. And also for the provision for price adjustment is also a ballpark figure, because we will have to look at the commodities price index and also the relevant price index before we will use it. Thank you. Chairman, in the past, we have also said this. That is, in the past, well, in the consultancy fee, we criticized the administration because irrespective of the scale of the project and also the amount involved, they would across the board adopt a 16% approach for contingency. But then if the scale of the project is smaller, then well, for projects that are of a very large scale, you will still be using the 16% as contingency. And that's why in the past we asked the administration that it should not adopt this ballpark approach, i.e. irrespective of the scale of project, you would still use 16% as the contingency. Alright, I hope that you can take on board those views, so that you would be looking at the nature of the project before you come up with a more realistic estimate for contingency. Yes, we have actually followed the established mechanism in doing the calculation. I was just referring to the contingency and also the provision C for price adjustment. In fact, if you look at the consultancy fee for projects like this, basically all you need to do is to look at item 1 under para 14. We have done some estimates, and we have already expected the number of people that will be deployed, and also the average per capita cost and so on. And also for contingency and also provision for price adjustment is just for reference. So we will set aside that sum of money, and if there are unforeseen circumstances and if there are price adjustments, then we will be able to make use of that money. Ms. Ann Chiang. Thank you, Chairman. In fact, my questions are very similar to the questions asked by some other members. In fact, I think the CEDD should have the largest number of engineers, but now for investigation and the relevant assessment and so on, well, a very substantial part of it will be contracted out to the WKCDA. But how many people do they have within the authority? Obviously, they won't have as many experts as you have. And also in the past, as far as I am aware, you would directly be doing the job yourself, or you would also be engaging experts to do the monitoring work on your behalf. How come you have, on this occasion, entrusted it to the WKCDA? So can you explain to us why? So that's the first question. And secondly, I'm also of the view that if you try to entrust it to different parties for design and other works, then what about the interfacing? And would that mean that you won't be able to have a more comprehensive consideration of the works? For example, for residents living in Jordan, they have been telling me that what happens in the future, for example, for people living near Menchang block or building, well, how can they directly access the waterfront, and also how do they go to the WKCD in the future? Will there be connecting transport and so on? So they are very concerned about this. And yet, on the face of it, you have already segregated the project into different parts, like Some would be done by the WKCDA, some would be done by the MTRCL, and others would be done by the XRL. So apparently, you've already segregated it into different pieces. Would it be better if you can do it comprehensively so that you can have an overall plan? I think that would also be easier to explain things to the public, right? All right, Ms. Chiang has raised this issue, and it has nothing to do with the paper under discussion, but then she has also brought up this subject that is in the design. You will have to take care of the surrounding areas and the residents' needs, and also the accessibility by these residents to the WKCD, and you will have to make sure that there will be better interfacing between the different projects. So for all the works that will be carried out in the WKCD, all right, the WKCDA has been asked to do the coordination work. I think that's precisely the reason. So, Director, anything to add? Well, Chairman, I think you've already explained the main reason why we have to entrust it to the WKCDA, because there are many CEDD works that have to be carried out on the WKCD, and for government infrastructure works, many of them would also be on the WKCD land, and therefore if we segregate it and scatter it in different departments, that might not be good, and therefore we would like to achieve a synergy effect if it's coordinated by the same authority. And also with regard to accessibility, well, there are several access roads connecting the WKCD with the other districts, so I'll defer to my colleague who will give you more details. With regard to the accessibility of the WKCD, I understand that this is very much a concern of the community. That's why in the WKCD, if you look at the OCP, within this year, the WKCDA has already submitted it to the TPB, and they have also fully explained how the residents from the neighboring districts will be able to make use of transport modes and also connecting facilities to gain access to the WKCD. And as you might be aware, well, adjoining the WKCD, the XRL project is also underway, and therefore there will be improvement in terms of the accessibility. For example, Jordan Road West and also Lin Chang Road project is already underway, and in 2015 that will also be completed.
Highways Department will, at various interchanges, carry on other improvement works. And the TD also has plans to improve the West Kowloon side to Jordan Station and Jordan Road connections. So a number of government departments are working with the West Kowloon XRL project. It is now 1 o'clock. Mr. Sin Chung Kai is about to speak. Anyone else? I can extend the meeting until Mr. Sin finishes his question. Mr. Sin Chung Kai? I have no questions. I just want to declare interest. I'm a board member of West Kowloon. Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, I will put this item to the vote. For those who support, please raise your hands. Thank you. Those who object, I declare that this proposal has been endorsed by our members. All the papers have been dealt with today. No one has requested that any item to be singled out for discussion at C meeting. So the PWSC agrees with all the proposals submitted by the administration. We have dealt with all the papers. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.